You've probably seen a lot of mummy pictures on the internet, but this one is going to hit different. First of all, what do you think about when you hear the word mummy? Maybe a dead body wrapped in white cloth, sleeping in a stone casket. Well, today you're going to be shocked to hear about a new mummy discovered in Peru in 2021. But before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Now let's dig into this interesting story. For a little bit of background, mummification is best known as a practice used by ancient Egyptians. The purpose was to preserve the body of the deceased for two possible reasons. One, to revive it, or two, to keep the body in perfect condition eternally. Jumping to current times, a number of mummies have been discovered in Egypt, most of which were from the royal family. And according to history, however, even some locals were mummified. And in addition to Egyptian mummies, deliberate mummification has been practiced by several ancient cultures in America and Asia because of the extremely dry climates. For example, the spirit cave mummies in Fallon, Nevada, North America, were found to be over 9,400 years old. And before this discovery, the oldest known deliberate mummy was a child, one of the Chinchorro mummies discovered in the Camarone valleys in Chile. There's also a mummification practice in Buddhism, and in several Buddhist countries, mummification monks can actually be found, and they are thought to have starved themselves to death. Now, typically, monks die from natural causes, but particularly in South Asian countries, and their bodies are later mummified. Now that we have some background established, we can jump into the interesting case of the mummy found in Peru and South America. Now, on November 27, 2021, a team of experts from Peru's Lima region's National University of San Marcos discovered an intriguing new find: a mummy hidden underneath a tomb. While this wasn't particularly unusual, the intriguing thing about this mummy is that it had been tied with rope as if it had been taken hostage. And on top of this, the hands were also bound together, covering the mummy's face. Now, to be honest, the mummy looked pitiful. Finally, the place where his body was found was not a burial ground. Instead, the mummy appeared to have experienced a forceful burial. And this brought a lot of interest of experts in Peru. According to them, the mummy seems to be from the Andean civilization. That would make this mummy 800 years old. And this was later confirmed by looking at the levels of carbon-14 from a sample of the body. And according to Van Dalen Luna of the State of University of San Marcos, this was the standard funeral ritual from Andean civilization members. And when we look back at the Inca Empire, which was part of the Andean civilization, we see that they were known for mummifying the dead. Now, looking closer at the Incan Empire, it was settled around the western portion of South America from 1438 to 1533. They would follow the traditions of the Aztec civilization, including mummification. Now, the Incas were famous for their massive carved stone structures, thousands of miles of road, and the establishment of one of the greatest empires in ancient America. However, one of their accomplishments tends to stand out. In just over 60 years, they built stone structures on nearly 100 mountains ranging in elevation from 17,000 to 22,000 feet, spanning 2,000 miles in the Andes. And for the Andeans as a whole, their belief system centered around their mountain deities. In fact, these deities continue to play an important role in many traditional communities in the region. Mountain summits were chosen as locations for the most important of all offerings, including human sacrifices in the Inca-ruled lands. Now, given the culture's rituals, it's not surprising that more mummies have been discovered in South America. And university experts are conducting additional research to determine the gender of our mysterious mummy, as well as a more precise story about its death. The mummy is in good condition despite its age, and the environment in which it had been resting for so many years. Now, if we dig deep into the mummification ritual in the Andean civilization, artificial mummification was a way of honoring their ancestors and maintaining the link between the present and the past. For the most important Andean mummies, including those of their emperors, they were treated as living beings, draped in fine textiles and jewelry, served food and drink, and meticulously cared for by their living descendants. And by the 12th century AD, when the Inca established their capital at Cusco in what is now southern Peru, this process of ancestor making through mummification was common among Andean groups. And it is also a known fact that dead ancestors were often brought to attend important functions and festivals like weddings. It was common that people would bring their ancestors to discuss important matters with them. Of course, there was also mummification of deceased members of the community. So how do they do it? Well, while the bone-dry mountainous climate near the coast naturally preserved human and other remains, the Andeans discovered how to speed up the process by removing organs, embalming or drying the flesh, and reassembling the bodies. And at the beginning, they mainly mummified the remains of children who died when they were still young. However, as time passed, they also mummified adult remains, particularly those of older people seen as influential to their communities. And the mummies were wrapped in cloth in a fetal position. This position was chosen to give the mummies solidity and stillness. It was thought that this gave them the ability to move through time and continue to shape the lives of the living. And along with this, the Incas were also related to high cold mountains, and sacrificing people in the cold was not uncommon. Inca sacrificial victims frequently became frozen at the time of their deaths, rather than later when bodies had begun to decompose. In fact, several chroniclers described mummies who were buried while still alive. And on the snow-covered mountains, this resulted in frozen bodies with little decomposition after 5 centuries. Now, while the main purpose of this mummification was for their belief system, it had another benefit. By the mid-15th century, the Incas' imperial expansion was in full swing, and they used mummification and ancestor making as a common language to aid in their conquest and subjugation of other Indian groups. Now, according to Inca tradition, the Inca emperor was the son's direct descendant, making him the ancestor of everyone he claimed as a subject. When the Inca absorbed a group into their empire, they claimed the group's ancestral mummies, making offerings to them and bringing the most powerful of them to the Incan capital of Cusco to worship. It was 100% a power move, but it was also nuanced, because they claimed to be honoring the dead for other groups. And because of their ability to communicate in this language of ancestral relationships, the Incas were able to spread. Now, jumping back to our current mummy mystery, experts discovered various ceramics, vegetable remains, and even stone tools within the mummy's resting chamber. This confirms the ritual typically seen, and also confirms that this was, in fact, a planned burial and not forceful as previously suspected. Perhaps covering the face was a wish of the dead. According to the ceramics and vegetables found alongside the mummy, the deceased had been presented with offerings by the locals. And this may also convey a message that no one wants to eat vegetables. Looking at the mummy more closely shows that it was well preserved. You can easily track the body parts of the deceased. It is immediately apparent that the hands are covering the face, but the ropes wrapped around the body seemed a bit strange. However, the experts are on the case and trying to discover the gender of the mummy. And in order to do this, the body will be removed from the place it was found, and experts plan to analyze the body in order to understand more about its death. Now, recently, scientists have been using a new 3D imaging technology to look inside the mummies of a cat, bird, and snake. And using this 3D CT scan, scientists were able to determine the age and lifestyle of the mummy. It is now possible to know about the lifestyle of century-old mummies. In fact, they can also figure out the facial features of the mummy. And to many people, removing the mummy from its place of resting seems wrong, but there is no other way to analyze it. However, given that these are the ancestors of these experts, it appears more ethically correct. After all of the analysis is completed, some sources say the mummy may be displayed in a museum for public viewing. And we're looking forward to the experts uncovering more facts about this mysterious new find. We're excited to learn the gender and the age of this mummy, and hopefully the experts are able to unfold more information about this story. So what do you think about the mummy? Was the buried forceful or natural? That's all we've got for today, guys. We will be back with news that is informative and stories that are just as intriguing. Until then, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Press the bell icon and make sure you get the latest updates. And let us know what you think about the video in the comment section below. Thanks so much for spending time with us here today. I appreciate it, and talk soon.